I call this meeting of the Committee of Higher Education, Finance, and Policy to order. I'd like to note that we have a quorum. After this, I will read the committee expectations. Welcome to the Minnesota House of Representatives. We appreciate your interest in participating in the legislative process. To ensure everyone can view, hear, and understand today's proceedings, we ask for your cooperation in maintaining decorum and civility throughout this hearing. For the safety, security, and comfort for the attendees, please note the following guidelines. I, the committee chair, maintain the control of these proceedings and establish the following expectations. Signs, placards are not permitted in the hearing room. Verbal outbursts, shouting, and disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Applause or audible demonstrations are not allowed. For safety reasons, standing or sitting in the walkways or aisles or standing or obstructing at your chair is prohibited. If you require any accommodations, please speak to the sergeant staff. They are the gold ties. Troopers and house security personnel are present to ensure everyone's safety. Those providing testimony will be given specific time limits, which must be strictly observed. If you receive an entrance ticket, please retain it, as it may be required for re-entry if you leave the hearing room. Failure to comply with these guidelines may result in the removal from the hearing room. Our goal is to conduct these proceedings efficiently while ensuring everyone the opportunity to observe and participate appropriately. Thank you. We will move forward to hearing the GO students from Bemidji State. We plan to continue the discussion on GO students, but after following up with Bemidji State, we believe the questions have been fully answered. We'll now move to the next topic. Before we do, we can approve? All right. Nope. We're gonna skip that and we're gonna approve the minutes. Members, please review the packet. If you find you will find the last minutes minutes. Is there someone to move to approve the minutes of the 26th of February 2026 as presented?
Mr.
I'll
Chair.
move the minutes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
Representative Scott.
Representative Scott moves it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same motion. All right. Now we'll move to GO students. All right, we plan to, so who's presenting? Does anybody have any questions in regards to the GO students at all? Any follow-up questions, topics? All right. I think moving on then, we'll move on to Bemidji State storm damage. I see President Hoffman is here. Come to the testify table. Yeah, please. Introduce yourself and proceed.
Chair Duran and representatives, my name is John Hoffman. I'm the president of Bemidji State University and also NTC, Bemidji's Technical College. I am joined today by Brent Steinmetz to my right here. He is from our facilities and grounds crew, and also online is Vice President Chrissy Fenner, our Vice President for Finance and Administration. I will begin with some brief context. We have some information on the slides here, but try to get as quickly as possible to our question and answer. On the slide, there's a copy of the cover of this book, originally published in 1970 and then again in 1994. The University in the Pines, Bemidji State University. It is a significant part of our history because our location on the lake and in the northern woods of Minnesota is central to our identity and the work that we conduct. Within the state of Minnesota, as you know, we have a large number of colleges and universities. The following image is one that we presented, that we put together. We know that students who attend a public university in a higher education institution in the state of Minnesota and across the country typically attend an institution within 70 to 80 miles of home. What you see on this map, for the most part, is every four-year university in or adjacent to the state of Minnesota with a circle drawn around it with a 50-mile radius. Throughout much of the state, you see significant overlap. However, when you get to north central Minnesota, we dropped the marker for that one just a little bit east of the city of Bemidji and drew a 100-mile radius from our campus. And as you can see, there's very few other institutions within that space. From Bemidji, we go 100 miles to the west, 140 to the south or to the east, and 200 miles to the north before we get to the next four-year university. Within that circle, there are approximately 470,000 individuals. That's equivalent of approximately 20% of the population of greater Minnesota. If you look a little closer, we can take that same map and circumvent the circles over a map of the state of Minnesota that shows family income by zip code. You'll see within this circle, the yellow and lighter green zip codes are for families with lower incomes in our state. Also identified within this map are Minnesota's tribal nations. There are additional maps looking at educational outcomes, health outcomes, housing, etc. The area that we serve consistently has some of the lowest outcomes, family incomes, etc. within the state of Minnesota. This is to say we are an essential institution within northern Minnesota, a workforce, a driver for the state. Before I proceed, I want to share a little bit of context as well. As we go back 6 years to when the COVID pandemic hit, as you might imagine, between the family outcomes, housing, educational, health outcomes, COVID had a particularly difficult impact upon Bemidji State and also NTC. We lost more than a third of our enrollment through the pandemic, and when I arrived in the summer of '22, we were facing significant budgetary shortfalls. In excess of 20% of our total revenues as a campus, making them the largest deficits within our system. The past 3 years have been difficult years. We have made substantial reductions in faculty and staff, reorganization of the way that we work to do things, all with the effort of centering our students. I'm proud to share, as highlighted throughout this slide, at Bemidji State, our new student enrollment is up by 17%. Our retention numbers, our success numbers, have increased by 7%, from 70% to 77%. That equates to 300 students who are attending Bemidji State this spring who, had we maintained our prior retention rates, would not be students at Bemidji State. At NTC, our technical college enrollment is up by 75%, an increase from 727 students in the fall of '22 to just shy of 1,300 students today. We have been aggressive in fundraising, increasing annual fundraising compared to the prior 5 years, which was $3.2 million to $8.3 million over the past 3 years. At NTC, we have quadrupled the annual fundraising for that institution. And as you look at the top right-hand tan hexagon there, you'll see that the shared deficit at the end of last year was less than $350,000 for our two institutions, a reduction from $13 million just 3 years previously. A lot of hard work and great outcomes. I say this to share that last summer, having come through all of that work, our folks are tired. They were tired before the storm. On June 21, a derecho storm came through Bemidji. It was about 10 miles wide, with the highest winds, sustained straight-line winds of between 90 and 120 miles an hour that came through the city of Bemidji and through our two campuses. More than 60,000 individuals lost power, some for as many as 5 days. There was extensive damage to roofs, buildings throughout our community, and as you can see in the photo, there were places where large swaths of trees were just mowed down by the winds. Millions of trees lost. It is truly a miracle that no lives were lost from this storm. Specifically at Bemidji State and at NTC, only 3 roofs out of our shared facilities were left unscathed. We had more than 100 broken windows and more than 1,600 windows that require fixing within the frames of those windows. There was substantial damage to athletic facilities. Mobile labs were overturned, in some cases simply just blown in as those facilities, water damage, etc. And we lost more than 200 trees between our two campuses from, again, notably the college in the Pines. It's difficult for photos to even begin to capture the scale and nature of the damage to our campuses and to our community. And it was not just campus. Our facilities workers, our IT professionals, and other individuals, after working days to help the institutions respond, would go home to work on the damage at their homes. The following, I will say though that I was particularly impressed by our community, the resolve, the way that folks came together. I can certainly look back and see things that I would have done differently, but one of the things that we did well is we cleared campus. We asked folks not to come to campus so that our facilities and grounds crew could do their work to make campus safe for folks to return to campus. Folks came together with barbecues and other types of events. Bucky was available to provide moral support to our employees and elected officials, including Chair Duran. Representative Rarick was on campus. Our governor was in town. It was great to see the support of folks coming together in that space. Let me take just a moment here to show a video that captures the damage. And this is specific to our campuses. as I shared, the damage to our facilities was significant. We were well insured. The buildings will be restored. The trees in Minnesota, and in particular in the north, we are connected to the land and to the beauty of the space where we are at. Some of these trees were 100-year-old, 80-year-old trees. It's not something that can simply be replaced, but it is in the very ethos of our campus, the University in the Pines. The other piece, and this is as I introduce Brent Steinmetz here for a few words, the impact on our people is the most significant aspect of this storm. To see folks who had already been stretched thin by the challenges of the prior 3 and 6 years work overtime to bring our campus back to a space where it was ready for students to return in August. And then after finishing their overtime hours to go home to exchange from one chainsaw to another, to start taking care of things at their own homes. Many of our employees continue to work with insurance companies on renovations, on damages at their property, and will continue to some time. But to tell that story, I'll turn things over here to Brent.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Brent Steinmetz. I'm a general repair worker at Bemidji State University. During the time of the storm, I was working as the interim grounds and roads coordinator. The morning of the storm, I got phone calls all over the place. I was not at home. How's your place? How's your place? How's your place? Well, this must be bad. I got home, I had a 40-foot Norway in my living room. We celebrated Arbor Day a little late this year. Then I called my boss and I said, how bad is campus? He goes, me and Aaron, our public safety, one of our public safety guys, they were clearing spots for people to just get into buildings Saturday and Sunday. He said, Monday morning, be here, ready to go. All right, so Monday morning, we had all physical plant staff, all of them. Anybody that was qualified to run a chainsaw, anybody that was qualified to run a piece of equipment that we have, everything was going. For the next 5 days, we scrambled and scrambled. There was a really good laid out plan by my supervisor, grouped people together. We took on some assistance from other departments within the physical plant staff, our electricians, our heating plant guys, our boiler operators, everybody was on the ground. If they weren't qualified to run machinery, they were pulling branches. We did that for a week, and we had things pretty well cleared up. Then we were on lifts, we were patching windows. We were, we were picking up concession stands that were completely demolished, gone. We just cleaned for a month and a half, easily. Then we started pulling stumps. Then we started grinding stumps. Right now, we're not the campus in the woods at all. There's hardly any trees left. Mature trees, we don't have hardly any. When I was first asked to come down to this, I asked some friends of mine, some Guard members. I'm 20 years, I retired from the National Guard in 2020. I talked to a bunch of Guard members that went to school at BSU. I said, what brought you there? Go to school in the trees. You can go hunting. You can go fishing. Where else can you do that? My brother-in-law went there for a business degree. I said, why did you decide there instead of like UND or something like that? He goes, I didn't want to go to school in the plains. Well, that's kind of what we're looking like right now. Yeah, he goes, I can go get a business degree that I can get at just about any college, but I was in the trees. I was in nature, you know? Well, that's all leveled. Yeah, we could seed a whole bunch of saplings, piles and piles of saplings, and hope to goodness that they make it. We have a 3-person grounds crew. We can't sit and run and water trees all day, every day, We need some spaded trees in there. We need bigger trees to get started, something that doesn't need to be babied so much. As President Hoffman said, we're stretched thin. Prior to this storm, I've absorbed 4 different positions that were either not replaced or laid off with no pay increase or anything, just because we need to get it done. And that's the way we've been working for a while. And we just want our campus back in the woods where it belongs.
I've conducted 4 tours across the north, bringing Bemidji State and NTC to the region. Through the Iron Range in northwest Minnesota, up across International Falls and the border, everywhere we go, there's no one else that's serving that region the way that we are. The workforce, what you see on Main Street in the schools, et cetera, it is our alumni. The largest, second highest transfer numbers in our system, working in conjunction with these folks. It is a special place. It is essential to the economy, the workforce, the future of the North. As we share our closing here, I am grateful for Chair Duran, who's bringing forth a bill regarding the damages so that folks understand the basis of that. We were well insured. Our deductible was $50,000 between the 2 campuses. We spent approximately another $25,000 in non-reimbursable overtime expense, and we have spent about $25,000, given the scale of the damage of the trees, to hire a landscape architect to give us a plan about how we can move forward with trees in ways that, as Brent shared, that so the trees can survive, sustain, and fit with our workload. How do you put a value on a tree? Well, it's $3,500 for a spaded tree. 200 trees, that's where we come to some of the dollar figures that are there within this piece. As shared, we simply do not have the human power to start with saplings and the luxury to wait 30 years for those to become mature trees. And so that is what brings us here today, with gratitude for this bill, and to stand for any questions that you may have regarding our response and the ongoing work. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Are we hearing from Ms. Finner today at all, President Hoffman?
Chair Duran, if there are questions that are needed, Vice President Fenner is here to respond to those questions, finance facility related. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we move the members' questions, I would like to just mention the fact that, the good things that come out of a disaster is that I watched a community come together. It didn't matter where you came from, who you were, or anything. It was really nice to see that we just put all our differences aside and it actually helped everybody out, especially for Bemidji State to take the damage that it had. When I went to Bemidji State back in 2003, it was beautiful. It was one of the things that drew me to the actual campus was it's on the lake. We could do some fishing, hiking, hunting. It's all right there. It's really nice. It's beautiful. I'm obviously partial because I went there, but I think it's the most beautiful campus we have in state. So I hope that we can move forward with a little bit of support in trying to get BSU back up to where it used to be. So with that being said, is there any questions, comments? Chair Liebling.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Wow. I'm just not clear in what form we're getting this request. Is this a bonding request? Is it a grant? Could you just explain, what is it exactly that's being requested?
President Hoffman.
Go ahead.
Yep. Go ahead.
Chair Duran and Representative Liebling. This is a bill that, so we have been working with Representative Duran. He has been on our campus several times since the storm to view the damage and to engage in conversations about what the next steps will be to secure funding for our future. We have, I am proud to say that our young alumni in particular have stepped up with a Replanting Our Roots campaign. And so this was a grassroots fundraising campaign from alumni, primarily folks who have been out 15, 20 years from the institution. So typically before the great fundraising years that you might expect from alumni, and they have raised more than $80,000 toward this project. Now that being said, that will put a small dent in the needs of restoring, reforesting our campus, and that is what has led to this bill, forthcoming bill from Representative Duran.
Representative Levy, just before that, we are going to hear the bill that I'm going to be introducing on the March 10th. So just kind of walk through everything. I just wanted to get everybody understanding the needs we had for BSU first before we actually talked about the bill. So Representative Levy.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's helpful. So it sounds like you kind of maybe haven't decided on the exact mechanism yet. I mean, I'm just wondering if this was, capital investment, bonding, well, like I said before, but if it's not maybe decided yet, you're still working on it, that's fine, just to know that usually when you learn about the need, somebody says, and here's what we're asking for, and I'm just not quite clear what we're being asked for, but thank you.
Representative Coulter.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for being here. First of all, I'm grateful to hear that people who have only been out of college 15 to 20 years are still considered young alumni. That contrasts with the graying that I'm noticing in my hair. But just one quick question I wanted just to clarify. You said your enrollment is up 17%. Over what period is that?
President Hoffman.
So, Chair Duran and Representative Coulter, so first let me say that I am not an alum of Bemidji State. It has been 30 years, a little bit more than that, since I've graduated, and I am a young alum. As far as the specifics for your question, this is since fall 22 when we began our turnaround project. And so our overall enrollment in that time period has grown a little bit more than 2%. As you might imagine, some of the small classes that came to us during the pandemic and at the end of the pandemic are now our junior and senior classes. The new student enrollment growth is where we have prioritized our efforts. That will become the students later on. And so building that foundation there. The same data are true for NTC with a 2-year turnaround for most degrees, in some cases 1 year. That is what has fueled that 75% increase in our headcount at NTC. Thank you.
Representative Coulter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. That's helpful. I wanted just to clarify that number a little bit. Yeah, I really just wanted to thank you again for being here, and I think you're right that photos really can't accurately convey, what you saw. But I just have to say how grateful I know we all are that there weren't any injuries or any deaths as a result of this storm. That is just incredible. So thank you.
Representative Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your being here with us today and speaking to us. In May of 2025, St. Louis, Missouri was also hit by a devastating storm as well that wiped out hundreds and hundreds of 100-year-old trees from its central art museum campus. And when I traveled there this year for a family wedding, to see that devastation firsthand from trees where we sat under as children and played. So I just want to acknowledge the devastation that I know your community must be feeling, having shared it with a love location of my own. So I just want to say that. I would like to go to your deficit reduction numbers. I mean, that's amazing. To go from 12.8 million to 350,000 is phenomenal. But I'm wondering, can you tell me how many, and this is not a knock, it's just curiosity. Can you tell me what kind of contractions that you must have made to get, and I'm sure they were very painful as well, but I'm just wondering what kind of contractions there were in student services, student programming, curriculum. If you could give us some idea of what happened there. Thank you.
President Hoffman.
So Chair Duran and Representative Cleavorn, make sure I'm getting that correct. Yes. I cannot say enough about the people of Bemidji State and NTC and the work that they have done over the past 3.5 years. The project began with questions about not where do we cut, but what do we keep and where are we going to grow? And the resounding answer from our community was prioritizing student success. And so we have invested in advising support for students to help ensure that they're successful, thus the increase in retention. When I think of 300 students who are at Bemidji State this spring instead of what it would have been with the prior retention rate, I'm thinking about 300 lives. That's also $3 million in tuition revenue for our campus, and that is something that we will sustain. We have invested in partnerships, growing transfer numbers with colleges across the north, public and tribal colleges. Our largest enrollment growth has been with transfers and with adult learners. That is particularly important at this moment because we know that the enrollment cliff, the demographic shift in the number of students graduating from high school, so moving to a sustainable future for that enrollment. And then yes, we have reduced approximately 30% of our instructional faculty, close to 30% of our overall employees. We have reorganized several colleges to create administrative efficiencies. We reduced the number of administrators on our campus, and we have made reductions in discretionary spending. That we are in the process right now of redesigning our future based on the numbers of employees that we have and for realistic assessments of future enrollment. That takes time and energy, and so I will just conclude where I began. The resolve, the resilience of our employees and our students, I believe, is unmatched in any of the higher ed settings I have been throughout my career, and I am grateful for the work that they have done.
Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you. I appreciate the follow-up. So one of the things that I always get concerned about when I see 30% reduction, right, is we tend to go to what we classify the essentials, right? Reading, math, right? And the things that people often think of as soft, the liberal arts, get cut. And through my own experience, many more decades ago, I have found that those liberal arts classes have been the ones that have helped me the most. So while we need the tactical skills, I don't know, to do the jobs that we need done, we also need those liberal arts classes for the mental work that we need to do as well, and to really be resilient when things don't always go the right way. So I'm curious, in that 30%, how many of those were in the liberal arts?
President Hoffman.
Chair Duran and Representative Cleavorn, we are fortunate in that part of our structure coming into the deficit was large numbers of emphases or specialties within some of our broader majors. So the largest pullback that we have had has been in some of those spaces. We have reduced programs. within as a part of that project. And we've had to make a pivot, and this is part of the redesign work that we're doing around the liberal arts, and in particular what I would advance as the applied liberal arts, which aligns with the holistic soft skills that you describe with a career workforce orientation that is needed in the North. As we see larger numbers of students completing general ed courses in high school, or going from high school to two-year colleges, tribal or public, in the North, we have seen decreases in the number of students completing those courses at Bemidji State. And so part of the work that we have engaged in is greater interdisciplinarity within our majors and greater attention to how is it that we address human intelligence, the complement for artificial intelligence, an essential piece, at a greater level in the major and in upper division coursework. I'll be quick to say that some of my faculty colleagues might counter some of what I've just shared there. We're working through a process, but that applied liberal arts, the whole student, the human intelligence is going to be critical to the future of the work of the university. I will also say that at the technical college, through the last 3.5 years, they have revamped their core institutional learning outcomes to be centered around critical thinking, communication, and citizenship. And so that's a technical college. Trades programs, and they are focused on ensuring that every graduate from NTC has those core breadth skills as a part of the work that they do with us at that institution.
Okay, and then just,
Representative Cleveland.
thank you, just the one closing comment. As we move more and more towards technology, the ability for humans to be critical thinkers is more and more important. And we are seeing here, even at the Capitol, how difficult it is to discern fact from fiction. Fiction looks very real today. And so I just want to make sure that we retain that focus as you go forward. I'm not trying to micromanage how you do your work. It's very complicated, but I appreciate the good work that you are doing. Thank you.
President Hoffman, any response to that, or?
Briefly, Chair Duran and Representative Claiborne, I could not agree more. As we look at history, whether that's in the last 50 years or the last several hundred, whenever there has been a major technological disruption to the way that we deliver education, whether that's the printing press, the internet, or AI, after the disruption, we have seen an increase in the importance of human intelligence. I believe that Bemidji State, because of our small size and the character, our faculty who just love to teach, that we're ideally positioned to do that work moving forward. And so I appreciate that level of feedback in that area. Thank you.
May I?
Yes, go ahead.
So with that human intelligence part of it, what better way to have your human intelligence than in nature?
Representative Novotny.
Thank you. President Hoffman, I was just wondering if you had, right after the storm, considered sending out a text to your fellow presidents who you know have chainsaws and carefully mentioning that they, have a big cleanup place at the thing, then they could bring their chainsaws and come up the next day. Or would you like to weigh in on that, Representative Duran? I withdraw the question.
Chair Duran, if I may, and
Hoffman.
Representative Novotny, the first piece is that while I have a chainsaw, my colleague here would not allow me to use it on campus, and that was rightfully so.
You could have assigned him to dragging branches like somebody I know.
I will say that we had campuses within the system who had volunteered to send their teams over to help. We met with the team and they said, you know what we need right now is to keep folks out of our way so we can just focus on doing our job. let us be the professionals that we are. And they did an exceptional job when we cleared the way for them to just do their work. That was helpful. And so those of us who had chainsaws instead went to our neighbors to help out in that space.
And I'll comment on that. Representative Novotny and Representative Steer came up to help me. That's the whole reason why that was there. I've probably got 100 trees down in my yard as well. So they were gracious enough to come up there and help me through this tough time. So I really appreciate that. So I'd like to get that on the record. But thank you very much, Representative Novotny, for coming up there and helping me out in my time of need. So do we have any other questions at all? All right. Moving on then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want me to pull this out?
Yeah, you can take your computer with you.
Okay, next, we will hear from Minnesota State bonding request. I'd like to now welcome the next testifier. Mr. Swanson. Go ahead and introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brian Swanson. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities for Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, and I'm here to talk to you about our 2026 bonding request. At its core, the request before you is about providing some pretty basic facilities to serve the students who make up Minnesota's current and future workforce across the state. We don't have a PowerPoint for you today. Instead, we're going to walk you through the Minnesota State bonding book, which is in your packet, which is a New York Times bestseller in the making, if there ever was one. Your deluxe legislator edition comes with some additional supplemental handouts, which I'm certain will liven up your book club discussions about the book. The 2026 request is composed of projects that you have largely seen before, so we'll go through this relatively quickly. I will start on page 2 with an overview of Minnesota State system, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all of you and your other colleagues for the $84 million in capital investment you put into Minnesota State last year. These kinds of investments make a transformational difference for our students and for the Minnesota companies and organizations that employ them. So if we turn to page 2, for those of you not familiar, do you have they should have page numbers on them. All right. I did check that, so. For those, we are the 4th largest higher education system in the United States behind the State University of New York, the City University of New York, and the University System of Georgia. Minnesota State is an open access system. We welcome anyone with a high school degree or equivalent. We educate almost 2/3 of Minnesotans pursuing undergraduate credentials, as well as providing numerous workforce-oriented non-credit certification programs. This diversity of programs, socioeconomic backgrounds, and demographics makes for an amazingly rich but crazily complicated set of facility requirements. You will find programs for landscapers, electricians, welders, surgery technicians, gunsmiths, accountants, computer scientists, artists, engineers, and nurses from International Falls to Albert Lea. Turning to page 4, part of what makes this facility network so complicated is that Minnesota has a history of making higher education convenient and available to all. The state universities, the community colleges, and the technical colleges grew up as 3 separate, uncoordinated systems. Higher education within 50 miles of everyone in Minnesota was the goal in the 1960s, and that was pretty evident from President Hoffman's graphic about where Bemidji was. The outcome of this idea of making higher education available locally has been what you see on this spread in the book. 28.5 million square feet of space spread over 843 structures on 54 campuses. Our challenge, as you can see in the approaching middle age graph, which we should probably relabel the sliding less than gracefully past middle age graph, illustrates our problem well. The majority of our buildings and infrastructure is at that 50 to 60 year mark, which is a critical renewal point in the life of the building. Original systems have largely met or exceeded their useful life. It's just incredible the amount of money the legislature put into higher ed in the 60s and 70s. Enormous quantities of buildings in an era which are not known for good buildings or attractive buildings, and they have all worn out, starting to wear out at about the same time. So we'll turn to page 6. So the Minnesota State colleges and universities are quite simply at this point overbuilt for current and foreseeable needs. We need different space and we need better space. We do not need more space. What we do need is your help in renewing what we have, replacing what we have, modernizing what we have, and demolishing what we have. Since 2020, we have kept the growth of our academic space flat, and our 2026 request continues our no net growth approach. The projects on page 7 should look familiar because you've seen all of these items in one form or another before. The only major changes on the list are that we have increased the cost of projects on lines 2 through 5 for inflation using MMB's inflation escalator, and the demolition and learning environments lines at the last 2 items in the request were previously included in our operating budget request. On the next page, HEAPR, our number 1 priority. This is a legislatively created program set up in the early 1990s with some very strict rules about how those funds can be used. It's the most important bonding funding you give us, but it also seems to be the first that gets cut in the bonding bill development. You can see from the pictures on the next page, and the projects are not glamorous, but they're important. This funding renews building envelopes, roofs and windows, replaces plumbing, electrical, heating, cooling, and ventilation systems, resolves building code and accessibility deficiencies, improves energy efficiency, and upgrades utility infrastructure. Making these kinds of improvements early makes buildings last longer and reduces the need for whole buildings to be replaced later. Without a regular and sufficient allocation of HEAPR funding, it's only a matter of time until we have a building fail. Page 10 shows the highest priority projects for each campus. We have a detailed list of the $200 million request is in your packet. So starting on page 12, you'll see our 4 standalone appropriation projects. These projects were all funded by the legislature for design in 2023. The first of these, the St. Paul College Student Services and Classroom Project, will renovate over 100,000 square feet of space and demolish 13,000. The space was originally built in the 1960s by the St. Paul Public Schools. Most of the technical colleges were owned by public schools before they were transferred to Minnesota State. The building's held up well, it's been well maintained, but it's functionally obsolete. The project will consolidate student services into a one-stop service center, repurposes old classrooms into new learning hubs, bringing together faculty, peer mentoring, student gathering, and classrooms in each of the campus's four core program areas. And the project eliminates an obsolete old theater and a number of old underused computer labs. Armstrong Hall at Minnesota State University Mankato is the kind of cinder block bunker of a classroom building that could only be the product of the 1960s. And worse than the fact that it's functionally obsolete and ugly, it's falling apart. A 2018 estimate for fixing it was well over $55 million at the time, which would have been logistically impossible and left the campus with an obsolete, ugly building in the middle of campus. The plan here is to build a newer, smaller building with the kind and size of classrooms the campus needs today. For those of you that have toured the building, you have seen the corroded pipes and spalling concrete firsthand and the enormous challenge we face. Armstrong Hall is a highly productive building, generating an enormous number of in-person student contact hours, but it is quickly reaching the end of its useful life. Page 14 has the Center for Interdisciplinary Collaboration, Engagement, and Learning at Winona State. This project replaces 2 obsolete 1964 classroom buildings, Gildemeister and Watkins Halls, with 1 new, smaller energy efficiency building. The building will support programs in math, computer science, art, and design. The floor-to-floor height in the existing buildings limits flexibility. The mechanical systems are at the end of their life. There are no fire sprinklers. The electrical system is original, and the restrooms are not ADA compliant. Here again, it makes more sense to build 1 smaller building than invest in 2 existing obsolete buildings. The last of the 4 appropriation projects, the Heinz Center renovation at Rochester Community and Technical College, will serve a number of high-demand career and technical education programs, including facility services technology, that's like HVAC technicians and such, law enforcement, computer-aided design, and welding. The renovation will co-locate programs for efficiency, provide new classrooms and laboratories to meet the requirements of these specific programs, and then open up visibility to the programs with the goal of exposing more students to and encouraging them to consider programs with high workforce demands in the region. Finally, on page 16, we get to demolition and learning environments. Demolition funding is quite honestly the best money you can send us. There are no future spending tails. Demolition reduces deferred maintenance, reduces energy consumption, saves operating costs, and reduces our carbon footprint. It's a quadruple win. The $25 million we have requested will target 16 buildings and 500,000 square feet, but we've identified almost 1.3 million square feet across the system that we could get rid of if we had enough money. For context, removing 500,000 gross square feet is the equivalent to closing and eliminating our 6 smallest campuses. Removing 1.3 million gross square feet is the equivalent of closing and eliminating our 13 smallest campuses. A detailed list of the $25 million demolition list is in your packet. And lastly, learning environments. Our final request is for a series of smaller, targeted academic remodels. 13 projects were selected through an internal RFP process. These projects are focused on improving spaces for high-cost, high-need, workforce-oriented programs. And again, a detailed list is included in your packet. So that concludes my presentation on our 2026 state capital request, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Anybody have any questions? Oh, Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Chair. So we're going to have $225 million in investments here, and what kind of return are we going to get for them? One of the buildings you talked about being energy efficient and smaller, more compact, but more useful. What's going to be the return on that?
Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Novotny, I think calculating a return on a higher education project is always different than trying to calculate the return on a manufacturing piece of equipment. We don't make any money. So I think the question is, how many students do we educate? It's the workforce companies that hire these students. It's what those students do to go on to serve Minnesotans. So I think a lot of what this request is focused on is preventing buildings from failing. And so if we want to offer the kinds of programs we're offering, and at those legislative breakfasts, I hear repeatedly about Minnesota companies that want more and more and more of our graduates. These buildings they're talent factories. They're where people learn, and that's the people that Minnesota employers want to hire.
Representative Novotny.
Yeah, I'll rephrase it. So often people will build these new buildings, and it'll be under the umbrella of more energy efficient. I think it was building 4 that you talked about, more energy efficient, and then it'll be designed in a way that will end up having to have, we'll end up having to have a heater in a stairwell because they changed the light bulbs to save money, but then didn't consider the fact that the light bulbs were a little bit of heat that were keeping the pipes from freezing. So then they take out the light bulbs, they spend all the money to put in new fixtures, and then have to have a heater running. That's what I'm.
Okay.
Mr. Swanson.
Chair Duran, Representative Novotny, that's a interesting question. So we follow on all our buildings the legislative requirement to work with the Center for Sustainable Buildings at the university, go with the B3 requirements. So the design firms that we work with they do this all the time, and they've gotten pretty good at solving those kinds of challenges. Your most efficient building is the one you don't have to build. So anywhere where we can, we try and renovate the existing buildings. I mean, that's just clearly going to be the most cost effective. But at some point, all those buildings that you have just gotten the maximum life out of them. And so then if you are forced to build something new, then we try and do it in a way that is the lowest total life cycle cost. So when you build a building, the cost to build the building is really only 1/3 of what you will spend on that building in its lifetime. The other 2/3 is in renewing it, repairing it, and operating it. And so anything we can do to reduce those operating costs on the front end is money we save for the next 60 years.
Representative Nabati?
Thanks, Chair.
Representative Coulter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and excuse me, thank you for your presentation. I have to say, having previously been on a city council in a city that also came of age in the 60s and 70s, I can appreciate how you look at maintaining and repairing facilities. So that was an interesting parallel. I also appreciate your comments about overall space and overall footprint, because I do think often folks hear, well, we need to build a new building, and think that you're expanding your footprint, that you're building in new space. And I know that that's not always the case, but I think it's important that we get that out there for folks. The one question I have for you, just given the presentation that we just had, and understanding, of course, that bonding requests have to be submitted much, much farther in advance than this storm would have allowed. Has there been any reevaluation, any discussion about sort of reprioritization for projects on the Bemidji State campus, given the storm and all of that?
Mr. Swanson?
Chair, Representative Coulter, no. I think President Hoffman has said that the physical damage to the campuses have largely been covered by insurance. What they're after is the trees, which are unfortunately not bondable. But operating funds for the campus would always be appreciated.
Representative Coulter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. It was just something that sort of piqued my curiosity. And since we are talking about HEAPR again, I will make the comment, I think I've made it already in this committee, that HEAPR is really one of the best examples that I can think of pay me now or pay me later. And pay me now is always the better deal. We know that these costs don't just go away, and if we as a state don't invest in them, they end up getting shoved onto often tuition and various other things. And I think that's not only a financial problem, but we know that that's a reputational problem too. Parents don't want to send their kids to a school when they see that the dorm roof collapse. And I often joke, the corrections system doesn't need quite as much help getting people into their facilities as our colleges and universities do. So this is sort of my commitment to everybody, and I would hopefully ask all of my colleagues to do the same, that we just continue to push for a nice big HEAPR number. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Swanson, do you follow up on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think it's an excellent point that we are not in a higher education vacuum. We have border states who are investing heavily in higher ed. They oftentimes have nicer facilities than we do. And students, it's a competitive national market right now for higher ed. People all over the country are looking for students, and they offer really great facilities, great experiences. And if we want to retain people in Minnesota and not have them leave and never come back, we need to have facilities as well that offer the same kind of experience. And I think if you talk to our presidents who are along the Wisconsin, Iowa, North Dakota border, you'll hear lots of firsthand stories about the challenges they face in recruiting.
Thank you. Representative Liebling?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Being kind of new on higher ed, I do have a lot of questions about this. And it's interesting you talk about these buildings being built in the 60s and 70s, and of course, that was when the post-World War II generation came home and looked, and we had the baby boom generation, and then, of which I am one, and then our parents built for us. They said, wow, we got to provide for the future, and they invested and did a lot of this investment. Yeah, and I think subsequent generations maybe didn't think about it quite the same way. But my question for you really is about how the system prioritizes these things. As I look at this, I don't doubt the need at all, and I think that having a robust Minnesota state is really important for us as a state. And, but I wonder, you know, you talked about all of the square footage around the state, in different states of repair. I just wonder whether there's a master plan. Because obviously, we are one system, you are one system. And needs change. And obviously, you're saying we don't need the square footage we used to need. But I'm just wondering how you figure out that one project has priority over another. And in particular, I look at, I'm from Rochester, and this project that at Rochester Community and Technical College, it's been around for a while. I've toured it. I know it's really important. In my time here, I've seen, for example, Winona State University, which is one step higher. I don't want to pick on Winona State University. It's a great place, but it's had a lot of investment over some years. So I know that. So I don't know if it's sometimes who represents that area, if it's how many students it is, if it's filling a need in terms of a certain kind of education, you know, whether we need more automotive engineers or we need more whatever, some other thing. But is there a master plan? And can you kind of give us if there is? If there isn't, I think that might be a problem. If there is, I'd like to know more about that, how these decisions get made.
Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Liebling, you ask an interesting question, and I will confess I've only been at Minnesota State about 14 months. So I don't know the history on how all of these projects arrived, and there is no grand plan for everything. But what the process that has historically been is that the board sets guidelines for the capital request as to what they want, the kinds of projects they want considered for the bonding request. Campuses all then develop project proposals, and they submit those into a scoring process that included representatives from across the system, academics, facilities people, and that scoring process resulted in the list that prioritized overall projects. Since 2023, when the legislature said, these are the 5 projects that off that list we find to be the highest priority. There's 4 remaining, and one was the Alexandria project that got funded last year. We have kept those projects on the request, and we have dropped everything else in that request process other than the ones the legislature said were your highest priorities. And so that's been the origins of the 4 line item appropriations in the order they were in when the legislature funded the projects.
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I understand the legislature picks favorites sometimes. I get it. That's not Minnesota State's fault. But you mentioned that the board sets guidelines. I'm really interested in knowing kind of what those guidelines are and what the board's process for that is. And I don't know that the board turns over that much at Minnesota State, but I really hope there's kind of a grand design to this and a long-term vision about, because obviously you're building buildings, it's got to be a long-term vision, hopefully with some data about what the needs of the state are. And I'd just really be interested to know if we're doing that in kind of a systemic way. I mean, even the city of Rochester that I represent, you know, has a plan. Maybe it doesn't always follow the plan, I don't know, but they do have there is some like step back, think about what it should look like. And then when things come forward, you say, well, does it fit the plan or not?
Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Liebling, I think what you're seeing in the way the request is structured now with the no net growth strategy and then the 4 buckets of asset preservation around physical assets, maintaining the most critical things we have, a couple of targeted high impact needs, and I think the board will probably, they've signaled they want to relook at kind of that guideline process. The demolition, let's eliminate the stuff that we just know we don't need anymore, and then learning environments where we target smaller dollars across the system for high-impact academic programs in renovated space. That sort of four-bucket strategy is where we're headed.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Cleaborn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate your presentation today, Vice Chancellor. On the nifty handout that you gave us with the demolition and site repurposing program, I just want to make sure that I'm reading it properly. So I'm not questioning anything on the sheet. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it. So you have the demolition cost, which is the 25 million that you're requesting. And then you have the estimated operational savings. So if these buildings are demolished, you are saving $6 million a year. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Representative Cleaborn, you have won the prize for the most detailed read of these supplemental handouts. Because as I was sitting there going over my notes, I said, those numbers don't tally. And what you see is the, at $6 a square foot, which is kind of a very low-end estimate for the operating cost savings, you'd be right about $3 million.
Yeah.
The 5936 is more of a upper end of that range, which is the $12 a square foot. So we would say that the savings fall somewhere in between the 3 and the 6.
Thank you.
Because the kinds of buildings that are in this, they're not all in the same current condition. They're not all in the same state of being busy. Some of them have already kind of turned down the heat and stopped services, so they save a little bit less. So I would say that we should more accurately call it somewhere between 3 and 6,
Okay.
and we'll fix that in an update.
That's okay.
Representative Cleaborn.
Thank you very much. Then following the same vein of conversation, the third column, which is the $100 million of operational backlog. So if we were to fund this $25 million request, you were able to eliminate $103 million of obligation on your part. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mr. Swanson.
Chair, Representative Cleaborn, that is correct. So we maintain a facility condition assessment like the state and the university, where we estimate how much work is needed, should have been done in a building. And then there's another one, which is what do you need to do it in the 10 years? This is just, on these buildings, we have a 10-year backlog of $103 million that if we don't get rid of them and if we were to keep them, you would see eventually show up in a HEPA request.
Representative Cleaborn.
Thank you. But at present, the lights on cost, if you would be that 3 to 6 million yearly. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Swanson.
Thank you so much.
Representative Hicks.
Thank you so much. I always love our HEPA presentation because I feel really strongly that like there's no reasonable person who would not invest in maintaining our buildings. So I really appreciate that. I did just want to ask, some of these pictures look like they have flat roofs, and my understanding is that there is great opposition to flat roofs.
Mr. Swanson.
Chair Duran, Representative Hicks. Peaked roofs look nice. They are very inefficient, and they're not any better. Minnesotans build flat roofs, and I'd really hoped that our Flat Roof Society advocates had retired.
Representative Hicks. Any follow-up? Representative Noor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chancellor, I wanted to take you back to the demolition discussion. Looking through this, just wanted to ask if there is any opportunity in converting some of these buildings into housing that we can partner with the community and also the cities to be able to repurpose so that there's a saving when it comes to creating more partnership so that we can convert those into housing.
Mr. Swanson.
Chair, Representative North, that's an excellent question, and it's one we've thought about and people have approached us with in the past. Housing requires a lot of plumbing, And the HVAC requirements for individual housing units are very different than a commercial educational building's HVAC system. The building codes are different for residential. And the reason these buildings are coming down is that, quite honestly, they're junk in many cases. We've concluded in most cases it would be cheaper to just go build something new the way you want it that meets the needs of the community that would move into that housing than to try and repurpose the structure. And the geographic location on a campus, they oftentimes don't have parking, they don't have good loading docks, they don't have the kinds of things that you'd expect in a housing facility, because they're right in the middle of a college campus, that logistically it's not always the best location.
Representative Dorr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vice Chancellor, for coming and testifying with us today. There was some comments that were made by in the presentation from Bemidji State, which kind of goes back to another conversation I had with President Inch over at Minnesota State. It had to do with the efficiencies they were starting to pick up and some of the things they were finding in terms of restructuring classes and restructuring kind of how they operated. And what I was kind of wondering, if looking at that through where we have money laying around potentially within the system, what internal reallocations, reserves, or campus level contributions are being used before requesting any additional state bonding authority.
Mr. Swanson?
Mr. Chair, Representative Allen, if you know where there's money sloshing around, I'd love to find it, because so far I haven't been able to get my hands on it. We do require every campus to pay a sixth of their project costed, their half of the 1/3. Inside the system, the board has a policy about setting aside, tuition and O&M appropriations for campus repair and replacement dollars. And that is something that we'll be talking to the board about is, how do we, since the legislative funding, no offense, it just isn't adequate, we are gonna have to pay for more of this on our own, but every time we take $1 out of the appropriation or we take $1 out of tuition to cover repair and replacement dollars, which is kind of the operating budget equivalent of HEAPR, that comes right out of a program. Or something that serves students. So it's a very, very difficult thing to do.
Representative Allen?
Yes, I guess, Mr. Chair, I had a follow-up question as well. The other question I had for you specifically was, for 2 years I was down in Iowa, ended up going to a community college down there. Structure is substantially different compared to what Minnesota looks like. Fewer colleges, but they had a tendency to focus on the basics in a majority of those colleges and structure it so individuals could transfer to one of the major universities, either Iowa State or the University of Iowa. But each college had their own specialties that they focused on. And I was wondering, is that something, as you guys are strategizing down the road, as far as where we're at with our colleges here in the state of Minnesota, especially around your community colleges, are you guys looking at trying to structure each school specifically for either healthcare, automotive, instead of trying to have that offer multiple programs throughout the state, just condense them down to special or locations that are specially or specifically designed to be able to do that?
Mr. Swanson?
Mr. Chair, Representative Allen, that is an excellent question, and I've heard people bring that example up before with Iowa. I'm going to punt and say that one's a really good one for my boss's boss, the chancellor.
Representative Allen, any follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you guys are hearing that, because that was over 25 years ago now. That was probably one of the most remarkable things I had the opportunity to experience down there. And I look forward to having more conversations about that offline. So thank you.
Follow-up to that, or? Nope. Representative Cleaborn?
Thank you. I appreciate it. So we've heard trees, we've heard building demolition. It's unfortunate that the storm didn't take out the buildings and left the trees. So, in all seriousness, right, we can only spend $1 once. The university system has to put its priorities in place. So realistically speaking, does the university system want the $800,000 for the trees in lieu of $800,000 for demolition, right? If we only have X number of dollars, how does the university want us to proceed?
Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Cleveland.
I'm sorry.
No, you're great. I would, I'll throw this back on Bemidji because the first item on our demolition list is Bemidji's Pine Hall.
Right.
So that might be a question for President Hoffman as to which he'd rather have, is new trees or no building? Bernie's going to bail me out here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, brought out the big guns. Yeah.
Please introduce yourself for the record and answer the question.
Chair Duran, Bernie Ullman with Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. By far, our priority from the board and from the chancellor is HEPR, taking care of what we have. You know, the storm that you saw today is obviously something that came offline, and it is important, but it doesn't, you know, fit the importance of, you know, a roof that's leaking, and, you know, it's an important thing to do. And we're also, just so you know, we're trying to, with Bemidji, they've done remarkable work in bringing their spending and revenues in line, and it's been painful. So any help that they could get would be greatly appreciated. And we're also doing our work where, you know, President Hoffman mentioned on the philanthropy, but also fishing in other buckets around here with LCMR. And that program, I think the deadline is coming up in a few weeks, and I know they're engaged with that. So it's kind of all the above. I would say, just kind of going back to the other questions regarding, you know, how do we get to our rankings, and Mr. Swanson is right. You know, over the number of years, there isn't a political game that we play with ranking projects. And if I'd be disappointed if there was, because I would like to be a part of it. And honestly, it's all based on what the folks that get in the room that are the special, that understand our facilities, and they rank each other. And it's a very aggressive process, as well as every campus has a campus physical master plan. I think the board's work right now is really focused on, you know, aligning the needs of the state with the square footage, with the programming, and that is why we're trying to go about the question of, like, are you overbuilt a different way than to kind of go into a community and saying, yep, we're closing you down. We think we have a better path to do that. Now, just so the committee is aware, there are those conversations happening right now. That's kind of at the lower level inside of some of the communities where there might be a joint relationship with a county or a city and an original building. So we're working our way through that, and hopefully we can make some headway this session as it relates to the demolition as well.
You can stay.
Representative Cleveland.
Thank you. So, two things. One, I really appreciate the work that you do. You and I have had many, many conversations over my now 8th year on this committee, and I really want to say thank you. You have always been willing to dig into the numbers with me and help me understand what's happening. So I just want to say thank you. The second piece I want to talk about while you're at the table and you know more about the finances, in Minnesota, you know, we used to invest a great deal more in our public institutions, to your point earlier. Minnesota has been on a 60-year experiment about the state grant, right? And as we see that the state grant demands are going up and up and up, what we're also seeing is that the universities and institutions are getting less and less and less to maintain the infrastructure. And we are also seeing that there is this race to raise tuition as well. So I'm wondering, as we are thinking in a committee going forward with the limited resources that we have, is this 60-year experiment of state grant, is it time for us to rethink it and to put money into the public institutions as we did 60 years before. And that may not be a conversation for today, but I want to plant that in your mind so that we can have that conversation at a later date. It just seems to me the less we give you, the more it goes up, and then the state grant's not enough, and we have to increase state grant. And it just seems like we're chasing our own tail with no end in sight. So it's a conversation for another day, but I do want to elevate that thought for us to have that conversation later. Thank you, that's all.
Any follow-up to?
Mr. Chair, Representative Cleaver, and that's a great point. You know, many years ago, the ratio was 2/3, 67% would come from the state, and 1/3 would obviously come from students. And a number of years happened that were really hard on all of higher education, whether it was a state grant or University of Minnesota or Minnesota State particularly. I think back in 11 and 12 and 14, something like, the cuts were in 10, 15, 20% of base. So it wasn't like cutting our expectations, it was real money. And the numbers kind of flipped on us. And because of the work this committee has done over the last, 6 years or so, the ratio, we're around 50-50. And that is helpful to the students. And I would say that, I testified a number of times last session that the board appreciates the ability to sit down and have dialogue to set tuition. And it was a very robust conversation with our board where it wasn't just like, well, what do you want for tuition? Let's just do it and go forward. It was very much the student first, and they took a very measured approach, and now they're having that conversation going forward. And obviously, inside of the state grant process with the North Star Promise, there's a lot of conversations probably to have going forward, particularly in the next biennium.
Representative Cleaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to be really clear to anybody who's listening. I don't want to set off panic, right? We have to protect the students that are currently reliant on state grant. So I just want to be really clear about that so that no student is like going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? But I think it is a conversation whose time has come. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? All right. That concludes today. Members, the plan is to meet on Thursday, March 5th, 2026. I thank the members, testifiers, and nonpartisan for being here. This meeting is now adjourned.